something. Not
To call order the budget workshop session for February the 27th, 2019. Ask Councilman Frazier to lead us in the pledge.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. All council members are present and accounted for. And tonight we'll begin our review of the 1920 operating budget. And Barry, we're glad to have you with us. Barry, Jim, and I spent some time. We're glad to have you with us too, Clara, but you're always here.
She's always.
You look disappointed I didn't announce you. But anyway, we'll go through it expeditiously, and you'll have chances to ask questions. I'm not going to be taking any questions from the audience tonight. There'll be a public hearing where you'll be able to voice any questions that you might have based on our discussion tonight. So we thank you for being with us. But the purpose of getting through this thing in a timely fashion, we'll limit the discussion to the council members. So, Jim, do you want to kick us off?
Actually, I was planning on
Or Barry? I don't know. Somebody kick us off.
through the overview to start with.
Okay, well, the overview, we got the constant yield notice from the county, and we will be just fine if we do not change the current tax rate of 37 cents. And with the increased property amounts, will be over the FY19 budget by about $44,000. We are still waiting for the county tax differential amount. Corresponded with the person that sends that today. We should have that tomorrow. I use the same figures as last year. They don't tend to vary that much that I've noticed, so I will have that updated hopefully tomorrow then with that. The HUR grant estimate is revised and it's $303,635. State Police Protection Grant, we dropped a little bit based on the amount we got in FY19. That's based on budgeted amounts and actual used. And it dropped a bit because the police department was below budget last year. One of the things, they're still doing the overtime patrols. We've made no changes to the water and sewer rates. And with both of the fund balance accounts, we only need to tap into fund balance for both divisions for capital outlay only. So on the expense side, we checked Maryland State, and they want to do a 3% salary increase for staff, so we copied that. City manager position is split between general and utility fund. Treasurer position split 90% general fund, 10% to utility. The water and sewer billing division employees are actually have been moved to finance effective this year, and they'll remain split 10% to general fund and 90% to utility fund. But the home department's moved from city manager to finance. IT is split 80-20, general fund, utility fund. And the big change we made in this year's budget was 4 employees in the public works department will not be split between the general fund and the utility fund. They were previously allocated 50-50. And we just kept being way off budget because I believe it was 2 years ago, the auditors asked them to report the actual labor they spent doing the work rather than just going by allocated numbers. So I done a 2-year study on those allocated employees, and we found that if we budget them between streets 88% and parks 12%, it much more closely mirrors what actually goes on. So that's the big change, and that's where you'll see variations between some of the departments. And all of the, so that's going to be noticeably different. Maryland State retirement amount increased 19.61%. That should say over FY19 budget. Sorry about that. Law enforcement officers' pension increased to 31.43 from 30%. So that's over the previous year's budget. The admin fees for Maryland State retirement dropped dramatically. Not sure why, it's just rates they send us every year. It's not a lot of money, it's only, it's like 5,000 or 6,000 a year, something like that, so that's not a lot of money. And every year, we don't have health insurance for the upcoming year yet, so we base it on the previous years, so, and it only went up 4% from the previous year, but that's based on this year's actual. And I have budgeted the insurance and the liability to the home departments because it had been allocated and it didn't match the actuals. So we made that change, and that's the high points.
Any questions of Barry at this point?
Yes, I wanted to ask on the first point, what was the county's constant yield rate? If 37 is our current rate, what was the number that they gave us?
0.3632.
0.6.
3632.
32. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, the, these next two sheets just kind of sum everything up and look at everything. I don't know if you want me to review those or whether we just want to start looking at the budget. I don't know what you want to look at.
Are there any key points that you want to point out on this page?
Okay, I think it really just, these just really reiterate what's on all the other
As
pages.
we go through the budget, all of this is going to be talked about again. So,
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
Really, I guess we could probably just skip right into the
okay, yeah, that's what I
various
was,
departments.
okay, so if we go to where it says general fund, page 1 of 12. About 4 or 5 pages in. We show the operating revenues. Under local revenue, the real estate taxes are going to go up, by about the 44,000, with the constant yield adjustment. We did not change the property, anything with the property tax. We kept the same amount as last year. We didn't really see any indicators of what that was going to be like.
So basically, that $44,000 is a result of new development.
Yes.
The assessments haven't been increased or anything like
No,
that?
no, it's more houses.
It's just new people come to town.
Yeah, more houses, more property,
Right. And then that in and of
more real
itself.
estate.
Okay, and then that in and of itself is not enough to justify lowering the constant yield this year.
Right, it's only $44,000. But it,
2/3 of a cent.
and we made a bit of a change under the state tax revenue. The income tax for the past 2 years has consistently been about $100,000 over what we budgeted. So I bumped it up, not $100,000 this year, but a conservative amount from last year, because last year at the audit, they even commented, wow, this is really coming in more than expected. So we did adjust that up this year. We kept the county revenue amounts the same. The road levy and tax differential are the numbers that we expect to get updated from the county tomorrow.
Question for you. On the chart that's 1 of 12, 2 of 12, 3 of 12, the center column, is this the actual amounts spent on the fiscal year 2019 budget compared to the amounts of fiscal year current actual year? Which is the actual year, which is the budget year? What is the actual expenditures?
Well, that's the actual, basically midway through the year, so as of December 31st. And then this is
So
what
that's
was
not
budgeted
entire year
for-
expenditures, just up to now?
Yeah, and that's what was budgeted for that same term.
Okay, I just
so-
want to be clear on that. Thank you.
Okay, and on the next page,
And where are you now?
the next page where.
2 of 12.
2 of 12.
2 of 12, okay.
Kept the zoning fees and code enforcement the same. We don't budget for appeals board fees because that's not predictable. We budgeted $600 in rental income for Head Start again. And as I mentioned in the front page, we did drop the state police protection grant to mirror what we actually got this year, because we did not get as much last year as we did the previous year. And that's just based on actuals. The highway user amount, we received notification that that's gone up considerably this year. We're getting more money this year. We just got that in a few weeks ago. And we kept the parks and recreation amounts the same. If you turn to page 3, big highlight here is we've raised the amount received on interest income from checking because the bank has probably doubled its rates since, for instance. So we've, at mid-year, we were at 33,000 and we'd only budgeted 26. So 45,000 for next year is very conservative, but it's still an increase.
Just recall, we were coming off a recession, and this reflects what the general trend in the finance world has been, that interest rates have gradually been creeping up over the last year or 18 months, and that's a reflection on what you see there.
We did not apply for the street grant for the next year. And, is that for lighting?
That was
Or,
the
right,
Maryland Energy Administration.
So we just didn't have any projects that would have qualified for that.
Right. I think we had advised you several months ago that the current round of streetlights would address the remaining city-owned lights, and then we turned around and accepted Creekside, and those lights are not LED, but we had missed the application window to be able to put in for that community. So we do have one community that we just accepted that will hopefully, we'll have to go back and upgrade, which seems a little odd since we just accepted it.
Right.
But keep in mind, Creekside has a long history of the building period, so.
Have we, going forward, for example, Meads or the Faces of Meadowbrook, are we requiring LED from them?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
we updated the spec to an LED light.
Great.
And the last line item is what we will need to use out of fund balance this coming year, and that's all towards capital projects. We have been able to pull in enough revenue to balance our regular everyday expenses, and this is all for capital.
That's the first year in a while that we've been able to do that.
Actually, I think we did it the past year.
We did,
budget.
we did.
This is the second budget we've been able to do this.
That's good news.
And that was actually one of my questions. I mean, if you'd rather talk about this a little later, that's fine, but I was, curious about how we were doing with our fund balance, because I know in past years, we've all been concerned about how much we've been tapping into that. And if we are, reaching a point of balance, I mean, at what point do we get to the place where we can start replenishing? Is that several years out still? Is
Once
that
we get rid of all these capital projects that need done. And that's the biggest sponge of money right now is those.
Right, and I guess.
There are projects that have been put off for 8 years because of the recession. And it's just simply to the point where we have to do some of this stuff.
Oh, I'm not in disagreement with that. I'm just, looking down the road, I'm concerned that we want to make sure that we don't, exhaust that fund. So,
Still very healthy.
What is the general fund balance for the, at this time? Do you have that number here?
It's not on here, but I have it looked up. We don't have the number right now.
Oh, that's
But we
okay.
have at the end of the fiscal year, which was 2018, FY18, the general fund balance unassigned was $4,929,000, and that was the figure from the audit. Currently, on our most recent financials, we do show more revenue than expenditures. So we expect that hopefully to go up a bit.
You
but-
talk about adding to the fund balance, though remember, when we hook up a new sewer and water system, that goes into the fund balance. We're not budgeting that, so and
Right.
that's replenishing the fund as we go along.
right. I just, want to make sure that we're not running through it faster than, necessary or possible. From years past, like you said, Mayor, I mean, this is stuff for a rainy day. This is stuff for emergencies, and I want to make sure that, as the economy continues to improve, that we take, that we're able to take necessary measures to ensure against another future event like that, so.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I just following up on what you said, the connection fee goes, that we receive from hooking those up, does that go into the general fund balance or the water
No,
sewer fund?
No, that is in the water and sewer.
Okay, because that would be a big increase because of so many new units.
And that
point in
is
earlier.
restricted.
Right.
That is,
But we'll get to that later, I
okay,
think.
well,
right?
we'll
yeah,
get to
that's
that.
the
When we get into
utility.
that
We're on the
budget.
general right now, so.
So which page are you on now?
Okay, page 4, and we're looking at expenditures. We didn't, let's see, mayor and council expenditures, dues and subscriptions were increased based on actual, and travel, training, and education were increased. And professional other went up, but otherwise, there's only minor changes there. Finance department, the salaries have increased because of the move of the 2 other people into that. And the fringes are up because of the way we're reallocating, and also there are now 4 people in the finance department instead of 2. And the pensions go up because of the move. Everything else, we kept the same.
I wanted to ask a question, Mr. Mayor, about what category, whether it would be under mayor and council, that this hiring of an additional attorney, Mr. Karpinski, would come from, because I know he's not cheap, and I don't know why we're defending, after the news stories, the police officers that have been caught in trouble with our storeroom, and I wanted to know where that money came from to hire another attorney.
Not aware we hired another.
We didn't hire another attorney.
No, I haven't seen
Legit.
any bills for that.
Karpinski is through Legit.
Legit pays them.
So look at the legit dues.
I mean, ultimately, that's where it will be reflected. because-
So he's not going to invoice the town for, it's going to be paid by legit.
Correct.
And his purpose is, again, to defend,
That was, well, hold on. It sounds like you're starting to go into what was discussed in closed meeting that's not been publicly released yet. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what you're referring to right now.
well, there should be, if this is actual expenditures through the time of the first year, then invoices for legal fees should be here, and I'm trying to find out where they are.
Under
I know
the
we have
column that
another
says
attorney working on this police
12/31/18,
case, and I wanted to know where that money's coming from.
under the column 12/31/18, you'll see the actual expenditures through the end of December. Under the column FY19, you'll see what we budgeted. And under FY 2020, you'll see what we're planning to budget for next year. So if you basically look at the 2020 column and the 2019 column and compare the two, you'll see whether it's more or less than what we budgeted the previous year.
I think I got an answer to my question, that there won't be any invoicing for an additional attorney to the town because it's covered in our insurance premium. That's, I think, what I heard.
There are sections where that is covered through Legit. There are some areas that Legit does not cover that. I do not have the details on the limits of their coverage this evening, though.
Okay, I'll follow up with you perhaps to
We
find out.
we have not contracted with anyone to do anything other than through our arrangement with Jeff. We've developed a procedure to make sure our house is in order. That will involve, I guess, support agencies throughout the state that'll help us determine that, but there's no, and that's this fiscal year, that's not next fiscal year anyway.
And there may be expenses going forward related to what Councilman Frazier is addressing, but we do not have we've not been invoiced for anything related to that.
That doesn't have anything to do with the 2020
And
year.
those numbers would not be reflected in the actual as of 12/31.
Is there provisions for additional legal advice in any category that we're looking at of these 12 pages?
If it fits in under what is budgeted, potentially yes. I mean, we approve a budget. If outside legal is required and it fits within that budgeted amount, then yes.
I would like to have a chance to whether to vote on hiring an additional attorney or not. I didn't get a chance to do that.
That's why we do the budget, so that we don't get into those things.
See, the budget allows us to spend money on things that we anticipate we'll need for the coming year. And if you don't think we need those things, then the budget discussions are the time to say, well, I don't think we need these things, and have it subtracted. But that prevents us from having to vote for everything that every dollar that we spend in the city, every check we write.
If it's going to exceed what is budgeted, then I'm sure it'll come back to us for an amendment, so on and so forth. But
Well, I don't want to see the town defending people who've broken the law with our insurance premiums. And I certainly don't want any of my tax dollars going to defend people who
Councilman,
have broken the law.
we're here to
I told
discuss
you
the
all
budget.
that the police department stole my shotgun, and you all laughed at me about that, but that's a serious matter, and I've talked to other people in town who've lost property through the
Councilman,
property ruined at the police station. We want to be
we're off
defending
track.
people, and if so, what category
Councilman
would this slush
Frazier.
fund come from?
Please stick to the docket tonight. We're talking about the budget. We're not talking about the police department. We're not talking about anything that went on there.
Well, is it
We're
coming out of the
talking
mayor
about
portion that
2020
we're discussing
operating
now, or
budget.
some other portion?
For our general fund and for our water and sewer fund. That's all we're talking about tonight. We're not talking about anything else.
Okay.
We'll have time to talk about those things at other meetings. So,
Barry, what page?
We are on page 5.
okay.
12.
Any questions on page 5?
And the city manager's salary have decreased because of the employees moved to finance. The salary, 3% for all general fund employees is in this lump for city manager. That's the way it was budgeted last year, so I just did it the same way. And fringes have increased for city manager because our previous city manager did not take benefits, but we're assuming whomever will assume the role, we need to budget benefits. So that's why it's up slightly for city manager. IT department did not really make any changes. There's they increased some equipment and stuff. And then turning page, the clerk's office did not make much of a change. A lot of these small amounts are also just bumping up because of the pension increase, things like that.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask you to remind the gallery to please keep their voices low? I'm having difficulty hearing Barry.
Sorry, please, no conversation in the gallery, please.
Could you repeat the last few things you said, please? I'm sorry.
Okay, the small upticks in, like, the IT department, the clerk's office, mostly fringes and pension because both of those increased.
Last year, I think we added an additional staffer there, so is that reflected in this?
Yes. But it was in last year's budget as well, so it didn't increase it by that much. Same goes for zoning. That's, and, yeah. You look at page 7, we really rolled forward the same budget for planning and zoning, code enforcement, and economic development. And we go to page 8 for City Hall, we did increase some items there. Let's see. Interest expense has actually gone down a little bit because we're paying more in principal and less in interest on our bonds. Our bond loans are, and let's see, what did we increase in City Hall? Oh, telephone communication went up a little bit, and last year we under budgeted for the audit, so we've raised that this year.
What is bad debt
I
expense?
was getting ready to say the same thing.
That's when people, or it's businesses that are billed for property tax and they end up never paying it and they go out of business. And once a year we review it and determine that we can determine that, we check on the website and they're no longer in business. They're never going to pay us that property tax. So
Does it not go as a lien on the property for when it changes hands?
it's not real estate property, it's business property tax where they pay a tax on the
Personal property tax.
personal property. That's
Okay.
the word I'm missing, personal property tax.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
No problem. Before we move on, going back to economic development, workers' compensation went up significantly in that, and I see in other departments that has not changed. Am I missing something there?
No, actually, I believe you caught an error. We will correct that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you.
catch.
It makes our bottom line a little nicer. Not by much,
go.
but thank you, thank you. Yeah. Let me make a note of that. I looked right through that. I think that was supposed to be maybe 600 and not 6,000.
Oh, right. I would expect other departments it looked to be just about the same, so I would have anticipated
Yeah.
that. But
Okay, right, and I mentioned City Hall and the audit. And for the annex, we raised the contractual, it's on that, that's $400. And do we have any notes on that, or the annex? No, okay, but, and then the next thing is the Roberts Mill, and we dropped the contractual from 6,000 to 575. The previous year before last year, it had been in that ballpark, and we're not sure why it was raised last year to 6,000, but we dropped it back down. And also, we budgeted anticipating having them pay for their own fuel with the next contract. So that's why,
so we expect them to cover their own utilities essentially at this point?
yes.
If I recall correctly, last year when their lease was renewed, we only renewed it for 1 year because we didn't feel like there was adequate time for them to be able to plan and budget for that change for that renewal period. So we decided that we would continue as we were for another year, and then when we start talking about the lease, doing that up again.
Okay.
Okay. Going to the police department, and I slightly misspoke earlier, the raises under city manager were for everyone in general fund, but the police department, they have their own amount indicated here. So, we've got that increase, fringes went up, the pension went up by almost $17,000 with that increase they had. And we increased the insurance a bit based on this year's actual. They wanted an increase in training, travel and training, so we raised that. And just about everything else we kept the same.
Are they still anticipating purchasing two new cruisers this coming year, just like they have been each year?
That's in the capital portion,
In the capital? Very good.
yes. And the police secretary is a bit higher than last year's budget, simply because we under budgeted for that position because the position changed hands. So, and we kept the crossing guard the same. Then when we go to streets, you'll see the big difference in the salaries, but that's because we determined that we needed to reallocate those people. It's the same 4 people that were spread across the budget last year, but they just weren't spread the right way. So That affects the salaries, it affects the payroll taxes, and the fringe benefits, and the pension. And the maintenance and repairs has gone back down because that 57,500 was that bump we got last year to, or this year, to fix the streetlights. So they dropped it back down because they don't have a project like that this year. Solid waste is down a bit because of the new contract he had. He raised consulting and engineering because of all the upcoming projects that we're anticipating. And any questions on streets? Storm water management, we put in 5,000 for maintenance and repairs. And then for parks and recreation, the salaries have dropped because the allocated employees went down from 25% to 12%. Because that reflects more accurately the amount of time they were spending. And, or not really the amount of time, but just the way the actual hit.
Right.
And they've increased mowing because we're getting more and more areas to mow. But all in all, parks and recreation went down. And so total operating expenditures is $4,089,000. And then the net revenue prior to capital outlay is $2,197,000. However, that's mostly the fund balance thing, but it's still less than the how do I say this? We're not, we're making a little bit profit, and then we're pulling the remainder from fund balance
But
to.
we're paying our bills, but
We're
for,
paying our bills with a little bit extra, and then
we've got a little, and the
We're going to
money that
spend a
we're
lot.
drawing from fund balance is being used for fixed assets or
yes, yes.
improvements.
The agenda says that we then go over the water and sewer and then the capital. So do we want to skip page 12 and go back to it?
Probably wise, yeah.
Okay. And then the next page is utility fund, page 104. We looked at the differences between the water revenue and the sewer revenue from the previous couple of years, and it really didn't vary that much, so we didn't change it. We rolled the same amount forward. Standpipe rentals are going up because there have been new contracts negotiated and we're getting more money. And the big item here is the interest income, because we've already doubled we doubled the amount we got in for interest from what was budgeted in December. So I've raised that to 90,000. And again, that's the interest rates and the amount of money that we have in the account. And that's,
What is the water sewer balance, fund balance at this time? Do you have that number also today?
I have the, I have it. It's,
Is it same as the other one, the FY 18 from the audit?
well, FY 18 from the audit, it was, utility fund restricted was, 3,050,000, and unrestricted was 3,278,000. The latest, amounts we have in the benefit assessment fund is about 3,226,000, so we've brought in nearly 200,000 in benefit assessments this year with all the new development. So. Yeah, but those are restricted funds for infrastructure. We go to, and we're looking at using 4,307,667 of fund balance this year because there's some projects that really need to be done. So we go to page 2 of 4 for water. Salaries have dropped slightly, or well, actually about 40,000 because of the allocations being changed, and which drops the fringes and the pensions. And then we've raised materials and supplies by 5,000. The water meters and batteries, he's raised that by 15,000 because they're replacing a lot of them, plus we're having to put more and more new ones in because of the development, so that's been raised. And nothing else, and the interest expense has dropped a bit because we're paying more in principal and less in interest, and as the loans age. And then we look at sewer, salaries have dropped because of the way it was allocated, and we've corrected the allocations, which drops fringes. Materials and supplies has been increased to 100,000. They raised electric and fuel by 10,000, and maintenance and repairs by 5,000. And again, contractual went up by 15,000 in anticipation of needing the engineers for projects. And interest expense has dropped because we're paying less in interest. So, any questions?
None.
When we go to, back to that page 12 of 12, and we can look at capital outlay for general fund. We have the debt service on our loan, which is up because we're paying more principal. The IT project is for, is it?
Council tablets.
Tablets, okay, I knew it was some type of couldn't think of the technology word, tablets for the council.
This is for the digital binders instead
Yes.
of the,
Yes. Yeah. 70,000 again for police vehicles. 470,000 is for the O'Brien Street Bridge. And the big ticket item here, the 1,015,000 is for the Roberts Mill street light things, or Kevin's notes were a little,
No, that one's the,
That was
he had streetlights in
resurfacing,
there too
wasn't
on
it?
his notes. Because I have his notes,
that
but
one's the bridge.
the bridge, that's the bridge, okay.
Actually, no, it was the other way. The Roberts Mill, the 1,015,000 is on the Roberts Mill mini streetscape in the event that we do get all the grant funding, and are able to do that, but that's contingent on the grant awards.
So the other one is still the bridge, and, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
That's our share, right? I mean, the county's
Right, the county is doing-
participating in this to the largest extent.
The county is funding the stormwater retrofit, which is combining a series of small stormwater ponds into one large wet pond. And as part of that, they're also, the weir wall or the dam at the end is designed to also function as the bridge abutments. So the county is taking care of that portion through what we're already paying into through our town-county agreement. And that leaves the city with the actual bridge deck and then the road approaches on either side so that we will not have two dead-end O'Brien Avenues that don't connect any longer.
Did the county also, did they do all the engineering for that project, or do we still have to cover engineering for our connection roads?
Thus far, we have not paid for any engineering. And we had a meeting this afternoon, then there will be more meetings in the near future it sounds like at the moment, we will be able to enter an MOU with the county, and they will, everything will be billed through the county and we'll reimburse the county. We're hoping that we'll get a lower cost overall if the same contractor gets low bid on both the bridge and the retrofit part of the project. So it would streamline things greatly if the county basically manages the contract and we reimburse them.
Right.
So, but we are coordinating, inspections and who's responsible for inspecting what and how that will all work, and that will end up as an MOU.
Okay.
Okay, and then, they want, or they need a new dump truck for streets. That's supposed to have a larger 12-foot plower on it, and it's going to be more efficient.
Right, that vehicle, the idea is to have basically a full-size but single-axle dump truck for the city. The current dump truck that we have, I'm not sure if it's an F-650 or what level it is, but it's when the guys have to dig up the streets for water repairs or things like that, 2 buckets from the loader, and that dump truck is full and sagging. And also they use that dump truck for weekly yard waste pickup in the summer. But because it's relatively small, they also run just regular utility trucks, and then they have to manually unload all the bags off of them rather than just dump them. So this will be used for street repairs, and of course for the larger, wider streets for snow clearing, and also have the ability to push more snow when we have the heavy snows and our trucks can't really manage it with our just regular utility body trucks. But then also during the warmer weather will be used every week for the yard waste pickups and hopefully save some man hours that way.
Is this the tandem dump truck we see on the other packet in front of us? Okay.
I probably shouldn't say tandem, it should be like a single.
So, and that's reflected in the 160,000?
Yes.
So why is it that on the, on this document, it says it's 100,000? I guess I'm a little confused about the discrepancy. It's on the street capital
Says
equipment?
100.
Yeah, street capital equipment says 100 and the budget is 160.
Right. So just curious about the difference.
This one is a very rough draft.
Okay.
Okay.
So this should be 160 then? Okay. Thank you.
And just while everybody's attention is on that street capital, we also had talked about the addition of a new staff position in Public Works, which would also have triggered an additional utility truck. And we took that off of the street capital, but we did not catch, there's also a salt spreader. I did not realize that was a separate line item that would have gone with the additional staff and the additional trucks, so that.
So we're removing that?
Will be gone also.
Okay.
And finally, we have 350,000 budgeted for parks for upgrades to Bollinger Park, tennis court repairs, and Memorial Park parking lot repairs.
Where were we, I thought we talked about the water tower replenishment. Is that in this someplace? I thought we talked about redoing of the water tower or the standpipe. Is
It's
that
in the
here?
utility fund capital outlay. That was the general.
Utility component.
So now we need to go to page 3 of 4 again.
All right.
On the, it's like the next to the last page on the stapled packet.
Okay, down at the bottom.
Yes.
That's where the big money comes in, some of it.
And, let's see, I have to put my notes a bit here, because okay, so we have 525,000 for Roberts Mill Road if the storm drain, the water and sewer is approved from MDE. We have 700,000 for the East End elevated water storage tank and 700,000 for the West End standpipe rehab. And then for sewer, we have yep, 2 million for the belt filter press, and then the sewer portion of the Roberts Mill project.
Is it wise to do both these standpipes the same year? Is it something that has to be done? I know we've been putting it off a long time, but it would seem like if we staggered these different years, it might be a little bit more budget friendly, that's all.
We are pursuing updated figures on both of those projects. The vendor we've been talking to is waiting for warmer weather to send somebody up to do, to re-inspect the tank and the standpipe. If we would need to put one off, we would prefer that to be the standpipe. The tower on the east end is the one that's the more immediate need. MDE has called deficiencies with both of them to our attention, however, so we really don't want to be in a position where they've advised us to take care of this, and we would rather not end up in consent order because we've continued to defer things. The idea that we're doing at least one of them may buy us another year to tackle the second, so we can certainly revisit that.
That certainly would show our good faith, I would think.
How could we find that out? Is that something you'd be willing to write to them to say, hey, if we were willing to take on one of these projects, could we have like a stay of a year for the next?
Well, if we give them a phasing plan, I think they may be more receptive of
They're
that.
not forcing our hand on either one. They're just saying that this stuff needs to be done, and they're not saying you gotta do it, they're just saying it needs to be done, so. I think if we don't have to account to MDE in any way with this project, we just need to follow through on their recommendations.
Under consent order where we
Right.
have specific tasks we need to meet by specific deadlines at this point. So, and we would like to not get to that point, so.
Refresh my memory, didn't we have an issue like that a couple of years ago? There was something that we had to upgrade or improve that we were outstanding on, I think? Well, I want to say it was the shelter for the, was that at the shelter for the,
That wasn't it, I don't believe that was an.
That wasn't it.
Consent order, that was, for no exposure through our MPDES permit.
okay.
For covering the dumpsters and covering the material storage of it. So we were under consent order for a time for, both wastewater and of course, water as well, which have both been closed at this point, so. But currently we are, to the best of my knowledge.
We're okay at the,
consent order free.
but we don't want to fall behind. Right.
But we can certainly revisit that and reach out to determine a comfort level with tackling one rather than both, if that's what council wishes.
These structural deficiencies, are these, I don't want you to go into too much detail, but I'm just curious the severity and,
It's more a matter of recoding.
Okay.
You know, and then both interior and exterior of both facilities.
And I guess I also have a question, if this is the right place to talk about it, to talk a little bit more about our debt service. Because I know in years past, we had talked about paying off some of our outstanding debts rather than just paying, payments over time. Where are we with that at the moment? Are we any closer to paying any of these off? Are we at a point where we can renegotiate the amounts?
We just had the last payment on one.
With interest rates trending up, it's probably not a good time to renegotiate interest rates because
Which
Most
one
of
was
the-
that?
most of
Can you
these were-
remind me which one that was that we had the last payment on? It was,
Right now, I would have
yeah,
to,
because I was
Oh, that's okay.
anticipating sometime around budget time, we'd pay off a pretty substantial debt.
I would have to look that up.
We'll have that for you by workshop night.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
all right. What else?
The agenda said discussion of tax rate, constant yield rate, and
Well, again, I don't know if there's much discussion, but we
Right.
could certainly breach it. I mean, we're within $44,000 of, and again, that's about 2/3 of a cent. $50,000 is about a penny, and really not much point. Costs continue to go up, and it seems to me that the folks that move into our fair city should pay those fair costs. And I have no reason to think we should do anything but just leave our tax rate the same, not increase it at all. Anybody have any thoughts one way or the other?
I don't think we need to increase it.
no, I think if we keep it the same, I did some math when we first talked about it, and while if we keep it at our rate, we don't go with the constant yield, we have the increase of 44,000, it looks like if we went the way of the constant yield, it would actually be lower than FY19 by $151,000. That's based on, I was doing some calculations here, figuring that out, so it'd actually be, we would lose 151,000 if we went with the constant yield that the state recommended. Unless you have a figure, okay. Do you have what that figure would be?
I
Okay.
have,
Are you counting the
state
new-
sends us the constant yield.
Okay, so
Tax
that's-
rate certification, and they mirror our revenue from this year and take that against, this is what we were pulling in this year with the rate we have. Then they bounce that against the new real property base, and the rate drops to .3632.
Right.
And so we would get the same amount of revenue as last year.
So the same amount as last year, okay.
Right.
But
Okay.
on your point,
Since we have more
Councilman,
property, it would drop the rate. However, if we keep the rate the same, because we have more property, we get more revenue that we can spend on.
Right.
We don't get the full
Running the
impact
town.
of that because of
Right.
rising costs, but
I would like to just ask Councilman Wentz to explain why he found a shortfall when multiplied by the constant yield rate, based on the current budget amounts, perhaps, but we're just talking on the revenue side. That would be the same amount of revenue. What did you mean, 100,000?
No, I
What you're
made.
figuring that you're.
No, looking at my figures, I just made a mistake, that's all.
Okay.
So in looking at it, that's why I was bringing it up to get some clarification from what you had over there.
all right. What else, folks?
Well, I guess I would have one question. Wouldn't be a budget meeting if I didn't ask about water and sewer rates. I'm glad to see that we've kept them at the same lowered rate that we changed a couple of years ago. And I just want to know if there is any room this year or in coming years where we can decrease them again. And if you don't have that information tonight, that's okay,
I
but
don't-
it's something I'd like to.
Have that information, that is something we can research.
Okay.
The-
If you don't
the-
mind, I'd-
The water and sewer rates as they are today are funding the utility fund when we don't consider the capital outlay. Is that correct in my?
That is correct.
So any decrease in those rates
Would unbalance.
would
the budget.
unfund the utility fund, underfund the utility fund. Is that
While-
correct?
While our rates this past year have resulted in, more revenue than, if you want to say strictly operating expense, there have still been repairs that have been deferred that ideally you'd want to build up a little savings to be able to pay for those repairs, those point repairs without having to go borrow.
Certainly, you don't have to account for
So
that.
they become a capital project.
Right.
So, that having a little bit of cushion, between our rate and expense gives us a little bit of wiggle room to be able to do more repairs, on an annual basis and do more upkeep than we do now. We may be able to improve our televising, as well, if we can get out there and televise more quickly than we do. We try to do a quarter of the city each year, and identify leaks but again, our I&I program could be stepped up if we have a little more funding to be able to do that. I think we can reduce our I&I amounts and reduce what we're treating for plant for storm events. So there's a lot more that can be done. I think it's unwise to try to adjust the rates so that it's like an exact balance. I think we want to have a little cushion so we have some money to make repairs when things break. Otherwise, if you're just bringing enough money to pay the staff and the utility, the electric bill and telephone bill
Materials.
and so on, and something breaks, you're out of luck. So we're finally getting to that point where we have a little bit of cushion so we can do, more upkeep type things than we've been able to do in the past.
But that's why I also wanted to ask about that, if not for this year, then for future years perhaps, because it is still something that's prevalent, at least on my mind, so. But thank you for that.
I think it goes back to your question earlier about replenishing these fund balances, and that's really the only way you could do it is, by slowly trickling money back into it.
Right, and I, from the discussion that we had 2 years ago about lowering them 5% each, there's that idea that we would do it, in a modest and measured way over time.
Right.
And so I just wanted to check to see, where we were with that respect, so, but thank you for that.
And, again, I just remind everybody, we literally took a bath over the last 8 years during the recession because there was no growth. There was no, we often wonder about growth is enough or what we should do about growth and limiting growth or accepting growth. This is a perfect example of what happens when we start to see a little bit of growth.
Right.
It's so much easier to balance the budget. I mean, from 2008 until 2012, 14 maybe, 14 I guess, 15. It was a real ordeal. I mean, we were hitting the reserve fund, which is the reason we have a reserve fund. But we've got to think about replenishing that reserve fund.
Oh,
And that's what this growth does.
and that's the point that I made earlier. And then one last question on that note. With the debt service that we're paying down, would that be from the utility fund debt service? Because if we're freeing up extra income, is that money that we're going to move toward those capital projects, or is this something that potentially in the future that freeing up of funds that's not going into debt could be used for something like water and sewer rates in the future?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, I had to check. I had to check.
You know, I'd be very curious to see what note that is that's being paid off. It occurs to me that it's been 10 years since we've redone the sewer plant, so it could be something related to that. So I'd be anxious to see what that turns out to be.
Right, but I just had to ask, throw the conversation out there.
Mr. Mayor, there was one thing that I was going to ask Barry before, while we have her here. Is there any place in this audit, in this budget, where we could put a performance audit or a complete financial review, since we've had such amount of news about that? I was going to suggest at the workshop that we hire an outside firm to do an audit, a performance audit, see if there's duplication of services, and also a complete financial audit, since there's been irregularities in the property.
We do that every year.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, but I mean an outside company to restore
It is
do.
outside
We do
company.
that every year.
city government.
We do. Every year, we have that audit meeting where an outside company comes in and tells us,
Well, that's an inside company. I want this.
no, that's an outside
Outside
company.
company.
They don't work for us. That's an outside company
go out
that
on
comes
bid.
in and goes through it. That's why you don't see them every other day of the year. You only see them that part of the year.
It was October usually, right?
It's,
Okay,
I think there's grave concern in the city about recent newscasts, and I think a performance audit would be something that would reveal from another vantage point.
One thing you should know
duplicative
better than
services
anybody
that we
else,
have.
Councilman, is that you can't believe newscasts or reports. So this, any particular questions? We'll have this budget for us to review at the hearing. Is that the next step?
We'll introduce it with the, and I don't have the budget schedule in front of me. Do you have the budget schedule handy?
Oh, good. I want to write that down
you
if
can
you
bring
have
that.
an outline of the schedule.
Nobody has.
At the March meeting.
You don't have your budget schedule, do you?
My what schedule?
Budget schedule.
Passage schedule for
No, I don't.
business meeting.
Okay.
If you don't have it there with you, could you slip something in my box about that schedule when you have it before you? So I can review it again, since it's been changed a little bit since we first talked about it. Thank you so much for that.
All right. What else does anyone have to bring up?
If I could, if anyone has, specific questions that you would like to have addressed, feel free to email me. I'll go to that department, try to get the detail or the explanation if there's a particular line item that you have questions about. Just let us know. We'll do the research and can present back at say, the workshop or something like that, so everybody can hear the answer. I kind of figure if one person's asking,
Yeah.
it's possible more than one might be wondering. So,
Okay.
if you'd like to, we can handle things that way.
Good job, by the way.
If you see it, give us a little chance to dig into it so that we can have an answer for you at the next meeting.
Well, while I have the city council here, I'd like to ask them if they've received any paychecks in January or February this year, because I got a letter from the pension people that said no contributions have been made against my paychecks in the year 2019. So wanted to ask the city councilman if they've got any paychecks since the first of the year.
I forget, I think it was last month it was explained, yeah, that
There was a memo that went out about skipping a month.
because we accidentally, yeah.
right.
Yeah,
We got an extra paycheck in 2018.
18.
Well, and I would just send an email to Clara about what you received, because I know I had received a letter that said there was a mistake and that I was going to be taken out of the system because there were no contributions being
That's
made.
the letter I got.
Okay, check with Claire, because she can clarify with them, and usually it's a mistake that they send it to us. But I know I've gotten 2 in the 4 years I've been here, so it's, yeah. So just let Claire know, and she'll make sure that gets handled.
Very good. I wanted to bring that up while you said any other questions. So
Because of you.
I was going to ask another question.
All right. If there's nothing else, I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
like that. Thank you all. Thank you, staff too, because